They laughed when the poor single dad walked into the dealership. 5 minutes later, nobody in the showroom could say a word. The Carter Auto Group flagship dealership sat beneath the bright Texas sun like a monument to success. Glass walls reflected the morning sky. Rows of luxury vehicles gleamed beneath showroom lights. Salespeople moved confidently across polished floors while customers wandered between displays worth more than most houses in Cedar Creek. Everything about the building projected wealth, status, and prestige. That was exactly why Logan Brooks almost turned around before walking inside. He parked his aging pickup truck near the far end of the lot where it would attract less attention. The truck had more than 200,000 miles on it. The paint had faded years ago. One of the door handles had been repaired twice. To Logan, it was transportation. To everyone else, it looked like a reminder that he did not belong here. Beside him, 10-year-old Emma climbed out holding a folded brochure she had found online. Her excitement practically glowed. "Dad, do you think they have one inside?" she asked. Logan smiled. "Probably. Can we look at it? That is why we drove 2 hours." Emma grinned and grabbed his hand. For a moment, Logan forgot about the dealership entirely. He saw only his daughter. Since losing his wife 7 years earlier, every decision he made started and ended with that little girl. Money had been tight. Life had been complicated. But Emma still believed the world was full of possibilities, and Logan worked every day to protect that belief. They stepped through the glass entrance. Cool air greeted them immediately. The scent of leather and new upholstery filled the showroom. Bright lights reflected across polished vehicle surfaces like mirrors. Several customers examined luxury SUVs, while salespeople discussed financing options nearby. Emma stopped instantly. "Wow." Logan laughed softly. "Yeah." The showroom felt less like a dealership and more like an art gallery. Cars sat beneath spotlights. Large screens displayed promotional videos. Everything looked perfect. Emma's attention quickly locked onto a metallic blue sports sedan positioned near the center display. "That one." She pointed immediately. "That is the one." Logan recognized it from the brochure. New model. High-performance package. Far beyond anything he could afford. But Emma loved cars the same way some children loved dinosaurs or astronauts. Looking cost nothing. They walked toward the display. A few salespeople glanced in their direction before looking away. Most assumed they were browsing. Then another voice entered the conversation. Sharp, confident, amused. "Can I help you?" Logan turned. A woman in an elegant navy business suit stood nearby. Her posture radiated authority. Several employees straightened immediately when they noticed her. She was not a salesperson. She was the person everyone answered to. Madeline Carter, CEO of Carter Auto Group. Emma smiled politely. "We were just looking." Madeline's eyes drifted briefly toward Logan's worn work boots, faded shirt, and weathered jeans. Something changed in her expression. Not cruelty. Something closer to dismissal. The kind of judgment people make before learning the facts. "That vehicle starts at $86,000, she said. Logan nodded. "Nice car." "It is." Her smile tightened slightly. Most people prefer looking at vehicles they can actually purchase. The words landed harder than she intended. Or maybe exactly as intended. Nearby conversations slowed. Several employees pretended not to listen. Emma's smile disappeared instantly. Logan noticed. That bothered him far more than the comment itself. He could handle being underestimated. Watching his daughter here it was different. Still, he remained calm. "We are only looking." Madeline folded her arms. Of course. The silence that followed felt uncomfortable. Emma stared down at the showroom floor. Logan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Around them, luxury cars gleamed beneath bright lights. The air conditioning hummed softly overhead. Nobody spoke. Then something unexpected happened. From the far side of the showroom, a loud mechanical alarm suddenly echoed through the building. Several employees turned. A service manager appeared running from the delivery bay. His expression carried genuine concern. "We have a problem." Instantly, attention shifted. Technicians hurried toward the rear service area. Salespeople exchanged nervous looks. Madeline's expression changed completely. Whatever was happening clearly mattered. Very much. She took 2 quick steps toward the service department before stopping. The manager was already speaking. The customer delivery vehicle failed again. The showroom grew quiet. Logan glanced toward the service bay, then toward the worried employees gathering near the back. He only caught a brief glimpse of the vehicle through the open doors. But that glimpse was enough. His expression changed almost imperceptibly, because while everyone else focused on the problem, Logan Brooks had already noticed something nobody in the dealership seemed to see. The showroom remained frozen for only a few seconds before everyone began moving at once. Sales managers hurried toward the service department. Technicians rushed through side doors. Phones started ringing. The atmosphere that moments earlier felt polished and effortless suddenly carried a layer of tension. Madeline Carter turned immediately toward the service bay. "What happened?" she asked. The service manager ran a hand through his hair. "The vehicle failed during final delivery inspection." Again, his silence answered the question. Madeline closed her eyes briefly. Not because she was angry, because she was tired. This was the third time in 2 weeks the same model had created unexpected problems. Every failure cost money. Every delay damaged customer confidence. Every unresolved issue created another headache she did not need. Logan watched quietly from the edge of the showroom. Emma stood beside him. "Dad?" she whispered. "Yeah. Are we leaving?" Logan glanced toward the service bay where several technicians surrounded the vehicle. "Not yet." Emma followed his gaze. She knew that look. It appeared whenever her father noticed something mechanical. The same expression he wore while rebuilding engines in their garage back home. Focused, curious, almost distracted. Most people in the dealership saw an ordinary working-class father. Emma knew better. Long before Cedar Creek, long before her father became a small-town mechanic, Logan Brooks had spent years doing something very different. At one time, major manufacturers paid extraordinary amounts of money for his expertise. He had worked on performance testing programs most people never heard about. Prototype vehicles, durability evaluations, high-speed engineering analysis. Entire teams once waited for his conclusions before making decisions. Then life changed. When his wife became sick, priorities shifted. Career ambitions disappeared. Family came first. After she passed away, Logan walked away from the industry completely. He never regretted it. Not once. But sometimes, when he looked at a vehicle, the engineer inside him still noticed things other people missed. Across the showroom, technicians continued examining the problem vehicle. Voices grew louder. Discussions became more urgent. One technician shook his head. Another pointed toward diagnostic equipment. A third looked increasingly frustrated. Madeline stood beside them listening carefully. Every few minutes, she checked her watch. Time mattered. A high-profile customer was scheduled to collect the vehicle that afternoon. Delays were becoming embarrassing. "What do we know?" she asked. The lead technician sighed. "The fault appears intermittent." Meaning it works. Then it does not. Then it works again. Madeline folded her arms. "Helpful." Nobody laughed. Back in the showroom, Emma looked up at her father. "You know what it is, do not you?" Logan smiled faintly. "I might have an idea. Should you tell them?" He glanced toward Madeline. The memory of her earlier comment still lingered. Not because it offended him, because Emma had heard it. "I do not think they are interested in my opinion." Emma frowned. "That seems silly." Logan laughed quietly. "Sometimes." The service bay doors remained open. From where he stood, Logan could see enough of the vehicle to notice several details. A connector placement. A pattern of technician behavior. The sequence of diagnostic tests being performed. None of it proved anything. But together, they pointed toward a possibility. A possibility nobody appeared to be considering. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. The atmosphere inside the dealership continued changing. Customers noticed. Employees noticed. Even the music playing through the showroom speakers seemed quieter somehow. Finally, one of the technicians stepped away from the vehicle and shook his head. "Nothing." Another technician responded immediately. "Run the diagnostics again." "We already did." "Then do them again." Frustration spread through the service department. Logan watched for another minute before turning toward Emma. "Come on. Where are we going?" "Closer." They slowly walked toward the service area. Not enough to interfere, just enough to observe. Nobody paid much attention to them. Everyone remained focused on the vehicle. Then Logan stopped. His eyes narrowed slightly. The technicians repeated another procedure. One small detail caught his attention immediately. There it was. Brief. Subtle. Easy to miss. But impossible to ignore once you saw it. Logan's expression changed. Emma noticed instantly. "Dad." He did not answer right away. He continued watching the vehicle. Then he quietly exhaled. Because what every technician in the building had spent the last hour searching for had just revealed itself for less than 2 seconds. And judging by the worried expressions around the service bay, nobody else seemed to have noticed. Logan continued watching the vehicle from across the service bay. The technicians were skilled. He could tell that immediately. Their tools were organized. Their procedures were professional. Their diagnostic equipment was modern. The problem was not competence. The problem was direction. Everyone was looking in the wrong place. One technician checked software systems again. Another reviewed sensor readings. A third inspected electrical connections near the firewall. Each step made sense individually. Together, they were moving farther away from the actual issue. Emma tugged gently on Logan's sleeve. "You really know what is wrong, do not you?" Logan kept his eyes on the vehicle. "I think I know where I would start." "That means yes." He smiled slightly. "Maybe." Emma folded her arms. "You always do that." "Do what?" "Answer without answering." Before Logan could respond, a frustrated voice echoed through the service bay. "Nothing." The lead technician stepped back from the vehicle and removed his safety glasses. "Everything checks out." Another technician looked equally confused. "Then why does it keep failing?" Nobody had an answer. The atmosphere inside the dealership grew increasingly uncomfortable. Customers noticed employees whispering. Salespeople checked their phones more frequently. Managers moved between offices carrying worried expressions. The vehicle scheduled for delivery remained motionless in the center service bay while valuable time disappeared. Madeline Carter watched the situation unfold from nearby. She remained composed on the surface, but pressure was building. The customer waiting for this particular vehicle was important. Very important. Delays would not help. Neither would uncertainty. "How much longer?" she asked. The lead technician hesitated. "I honestly do not know." The answer landed heavily. Madeline nodded once and walked away. She needed solutions. Instead, she was getting guesses. Logan looked toward Emma. "Come on." "Where?" "We have seen enough." They turned toward the showroom. Logan had no intention of interfering. He was a visitor. Nothing more. Whatever happened next belonged to the dealership. Yet as they reached the edge of the showroom floor, another alarm sounded briefly from the service bay. Technicians immediately rushed back toward the vehicle. Logan stopped walking. The sound itself was not important. The timing was. His eyes narrowed. There it was again. The same tiny clue. The same brief symptom. The same pattern. This time he was certain. Emma noticed him stop. "Dad." Logan sighed quietly. "That is interesting." Nearby, one of the younger technicians overheard him. "Interesting." Logan immediately regretted saying it aloud. Nothing. But curiosity had already taken hold. The technician stepped closer. "You saw something?" Logan shook his head politely. "Probably not." "Probably." The technician looked exhausted. "Trust me. At this point, I will listen to anyone." Logan glanced toward the service bay, then toward Emma, then back toward the technician. He chose his words carefully. "The issue may not be where you think it is." The technician frowned. "What does that mean?" Logan pointed subtly toward the vehicle. "You keep testing the symptom. Because that is where the fault appears." "Exactly." The technician stared at him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then the young technician asked the question nobody else had asked all day. "What would you check?" Logan hesitated. He had spent years avoiding situations like this. Not because he lacked confidence. Because he no longer needed recognition. Life had taught him different priorities. Across the showroom, Madeline noticed the conversation immediately. She walked toward them. Her expression remained skeptical. "Is there a problem?" The technician shifted slightly. "Maybe not. This gentleman thinks he noticed something." Madeline looked directly at Logan. The same mechanic she had dismissed less than an hour earlier. The same man wearing worn boots and a faded work shirt. "Really?" she asked. Logan remained calm. "It was just an observation. About a vehicle my technicians cannot diagnose." Her tone was not openly hostile, but the doubt was obvious. Emma heard it immediately. Logan heard it too. Yet his expression never changed. "Like I said," he replied quietly, "it is probably nothing." Madeline folded her arms. Around them, the polished showroom lights reflected across rows of expensive vehicles. The air conditioning hummed softly overhead. Employees pretended not to watch. Customers pretended not to listen. Everyone failed equally. Then the young technician surprised everyone. What if he is right? The question hung in the air. Madeline looked toward the service bay, then back at Logan. Every minute the problem remained unsolved created more complications, more delays, more embarrassment. Finally she exhaled. "Fine. Her voice carried equal parts frustration and curiosity. What exactly did you notice? For the first time since entering the dealership, Logan stepped forward and looked directly at the vehicle. Because sometimes the difference between confusion and clarity is a single person willing to ask the right question. The service bay seemed quieter after Madeline asked the question. Technicians stopped moving for a moment. Employees drifted closer without appearing obvious about it. Even customers waiting near the showroom entrance found reasons to look in that direction. Logan Brooks stood beside the vehicle while dozens of eyes settled on him. He looked completely unaffected. No dramatic pause. No attempt to impress anyone. He simply studied the car. The fault only appears during specific transitions, right? He asked. The lead technician nodded immediately. Yes. Not constantly? No. Logan crouched slightly beside the vehicle and glanced toward one section near the rear of the engine compartment. Then he stood again. And diagnostics keep pointing you somewhere different every time. The technician looked surprised. How did you know that? Logan smiled faintly. Because if the fault was obvious, you would have fixed it already. Several technicians exchanged glances. The answer was simple, sensible, uncomfortable. Madeline folded her arms and watched carefully. She still looked skeptical, but now there was curiosity mixed into it. What do you think is causing it? She asked. Logan pointed toward the vehicle. I think the problem is upstream. One technician frowned. Upstream from what? From everything you are testing. The group fell silent. Logan continued. You are looking where the failure appears, not where it begins. The lead technician stared at him for several seconds. Then he looked back toward the vehicle. Something clicked. The signal interruption. Logan nodded. That would be my first guess. Suddenly, the conversation changed. The technicians were no longer dismissing him. They were thinking, really thinking. One hurried toward a diagnostic terminal. Another opened service schematics. A third pulled up engineering documentation. The atmosphere inside the bay shifted from frustration to focus. Emma watched proudly from the edge of the room. She had seen this happen before. Not inside luxury dealerships. Not with expensive vehicles. But in garages, repair shops, and small-town workshops across Texas. Her father rarely talked about his past. He never bragged. Yet whenever something mechanical refused to make sense, people eventually stopped talking and started listening. 20 minutes later, one technician suddenly looked up from his screen. Wait. Everyone turned. He pointed toward the data. There is a timing irregularity right here. Another technician rushed over. Then another. The lead technician's eyes widened. That is it. Madeline stepped forward. What? The technician turned toward her. Excitement replaced frustration. The signal is being interrupted before the fault appears. Exactly where he said. Nobody spoke for a moment. The service bay became strangely still. Then everyone looked toward Logan. He remained standing beside Emma as though nothing unusual had happened. Madeline stared at him. You saw that from across the showroom? Logan shrugged. Not exactly. Then how? He glanced toward the vehicle. The alarm pattern changed twice. That was enough? It narrowed the possibilities. The answer sounded ridiculous. Except the technicians had just confirmed he was right. One of them shook his head slowly. We have been chasing this all morning. Logan smiled politely. It happens. The lead technician immediately began issuing new instructions. Diagnostic procedures changed. Components were rechecked. Within minutes, the team identified the source of the failure. The actual issue turned out to be small, almost embarrassingly small, yet hidden well enough to waste hours when approached from the wrong direction. Madeline watched the process unfold in disbelief. The vehicle that had stalled an entire service department was suddenly moving toward a solution. Not because of expensive equipment, not because of outside consultants, because a man she had dismissed at the front entrance noticed something everyone else missed. Emma looked up at her father. I knew you knew. Logan smiled. You usually do. Across the bay, the lead technician approached. Mr. Brooks? Logan looked up. Yeah. The technician extended a hand. Thank you. Logan shook it. Happy to help. More technicians gathered nearby. Questions followed. Technical discussions began. For the first time, nobody cared about his clothes, his truck, or why he came to the dealership. They cared about what he knew. Madeline remained quiet throughout all of it. The realization settling over her was impossible to ignore. Earlier that morning, she saw a poor single father wandering through her showroom. Now she was watching experienced professionals treat him like the most knowledgeable person in the room. And somewhere deep in the back of her mind, a question began forming. A question that would become impossible to ignore. Who exactly was Logan Brooks? The vehicle was running perfectly 20 minutes later. The warning lights were gone. The intermittent fault had disappeared. Diagnostic systems reported normal operation. One technician completed a final inspection while another performed a road test. When the car returned to the service bay, everyone already knew the outcome. The problem was solved. The atmosphere inside the dealership changed almost immediately. Relief spread through the service department. Conversations became lighter. Smiles returned. Phones stopped ringing quite so urgently. Yet one person seemed more unsettled than before. Madeline Carter stood near the showroom entrance watching Logan Brooks talk quietly with a technician. The scene made less sense the longer she looked at it. Everything she believed about him when he first walked through the door had been wrong. Not slightly wrong. Completely wrong. Across the service bay, Emma sat inside one of the display vehicles while her father answered questions. The technicians had not stopped asking them. "How long did you work in diagnostics?" one technician asked. Logan smiled. "A while. A while," another repeated. "You identified that issue faster than our entire department." Logan shrugged. "I got lucky." Several people laughed. Nobody believed that. Emma certainly did not. She rolled her eyes dramatically from across the showroom. One technician noticed and smiled. "I take it your daughter disagrees." Emma immediately joined the conversation. "He always says that." Logan shook his head. "Emma, what?" "It is true." The technicians laughed again. The more time they spent around him, the more curious they became. Not because Logan was showing off. Quite the opposite. Every answer seemed designed to reveal less rather than more. Around 3 o'clock, the customer waiting for the repaired vehicle finally arrived. The dealership staff delivered the car successfully. Smiles returned. Handshakes followed. Another potential problem disappeared. Everyone celebrated. Everyone except Madeline. Something continued bothering her. After the customer left, she walked toward her office overlooking the showroom floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a clear view of the entire dealership. From there she watched Logan and Emma preparing to leave. For reasons she could not explain, she opened her laptop. Then she typed a name into a search field. Logan Brooks. The results appeared almost immediately. At first they looked ordinary. Then she kept scrolling. Her expression changed. Then changed again. Several articles appeared from years earlier. Technical journals. Automotive publications. Industry conference records. Awards. Engineering panels. Development programs. Prototype testing teams. Madeline sat back slowly. The man she mocked less than 2 hours earlier had once been one of the most respected vehicle testing specialists in the industry. Her eyes moved from article to article. Every new result made the situation worse. Or perhaps clearer. Logan had not exaggerated his experience. He had hidden it. There was a difference. A very important difference. Meanwhile, Logan and Emma reached the parking lot. The old pickup truck waited exactly where they left it. Emma climbed inside and immediately smiled. "That was fun." Logan laughed. "Fun? You fixed their problem." "I did not fix it, Dad." He smiled and started the engine. "All right. Maybe I helped." Emma looked out the window toward the dealership. "Do you think she feels bad?" Logan knew exactly who she meant. "Maybe. She should." The answer arrived so quickly that Logan laughed again. Emma crossed her arms. "She was mean. She was having a bad day. That is not an excuse." Logan looked at his daughter. Sometimes children see things more clearly than adults. "You might be right." Back inside the dealership, Madeline continued reading. One article described a prototype testing program Logan helped design. Another mentioned his role evaluating performance systems for major manufacturers. A third quoted industry experts calling him one of the best diagnostic minds in the field. She stared at the screen in disbelief. Then she remembered her own words from earlier that morning. Most people prefer looking at vehicles they can actually purchase. The memory made her cringe. A knock sounded at her office door. The lead technician stepped inside. "You wanted the final report?" Madeline nodded. He handed over the paperwork. Then he hesitated. "You know," he said carefully, "that guy out there?" Madeline looked up. "Logan?" "Yeah." The technician smiled. "I have never seen anyone spot a problem that fast." He left before she could respond. Madeline looked through the office window. The pickup truck was already pulling away. The afternoon sunlight reflected off its faded paint as it exited the lot. For a long moment, she simply watched. because the story she told herself when Logan arrived had completely fallen apart. The poor single father she dismissed was not who she thought he was. And for the first time all day, Madeline Carter realized that fixing the vehicle might have been the easiest problem she would face. The harder challenge was figuring out how to make things right. The drive back to Cedar Creek took a little over 2 hours. Emma spent most of it talking about the sports sedan she loved, while Logan listened with a smile. The highway stretched endlessly beneath the late afternoon sun. Fields rolled past. Small towns appeared and disappeared. Life gradually returned to normal, or at least that was what Logan expected. By the time they reached home, the dealership felt like something already fading into the distance. The next morning began exactly the way most mornings did. Logan opened the garage before sunrise. The smell of coffee filled the workshop. A customer dropped off an aging pickup truck. Another needed help with a transmission issue. The familiar rhythm of ordinary life returned. Wrenches turned. Engines hummed. Radios played quietly in the background. Nothing seemed different. Around 10 o'clock, however, a black luxury SUV appeared outside the garage. Then another. Then a third. Logan looked up from beneath an open hood. That cannot be good. Emma glanced through the office window. It looks expensive. Several people stepped out. One of them immediately caught Logan's attention. Madeline Carter. She walked toward the garage carrying a folder. No cameras. No assistants. No dealership employees. Just her. Logan wiped his hands on a shop towel and stepped forward. Good morning. Madeline stopped a few feet away. For a moment, she seemed unsure how to begin. That alone surprised Logan. Confidence usually came naturally to her. Finally, she spoke. I owe you an apology. The garage fell quiet. Even Emma stopped pretending not to listen. Logan looked genuinely puzzled. For what? Madeline laughed softly. You know exactly for what. Logan considered her words. Then he shrugged. People make assumptions. I made several. That happens. The answer somehow made her feel worse. She had expected frustration, maybe even resentment. Instead, she found grace. The kind of grace people rarely deserve but never forget. Madeline opened the folder in her hands. Inside were printed articles, engineering records, conference programs, and technical publications. Every page carried Logan's name. I spent most of last night reading. Logan immediately understood. You did not have to do that. I think I did. She looked around the garage. Old tools, workbenches, parts shelves, a place built around usefulness rather than appearance. You were one of the best engineers in the industry. Logan smiled faintly. A long time ago. People still quote your work. Some people have too much free time. Emma laughed loudly. Madeline could not help smiling too. For the first time, the tension between them began to disappear. Why did you leave? She asked quietly. Logan looked toward his daughter. The answer required no further explanation. Madeline followed his gaze and immediately understood. No awards, no promotions, no title in the world could compete with that reason. Several seconds passed. Then she reached into the folder and removed a document. I would like to offer you something. Logan raised an eyebrow. That sounds dangerous. Hear me out. She handed him the paper. Logan glanced down, then looked up again. The number printed near the bottom was significant. Very significant. Consulting contract. Advisory role. Executive compensation package. The kind of opportunity most people spent years chasing. Logan handed the paper back immediately. No. Madeline blinked. You did not even think about it. I did. For how long? About 3 seconds. Emma smiled. She had seen this before. Logan returned to the truck he was repairing and picked up a wrench. The conversation appeared finished. Madeline stared at him in disbelief. Most people would kill for that opportunity. Logan looked up. Most people are not me. Another silence followed. Not awkward, just honest. Finally, Madeline laughed. I am starting to realize that. She placed the contract back into the folder. Then what do you want? Logan thought for a moment. The answer came easily. Respect the people who know what they are talking about. Madeline nodded slowly. Fair, even when they do not look impressive. Also fair. Emma pointed at her father. I told you she should apologize. Logan covered his face with one hand. Madeline laughed harder than she had in weeks. For the first time since the dealership incident, the atmosphere felt light, comfortable, human. Yet before she left, Madeline noticed something sitting on a nearby shelf. A worn binder filled with notes and sketches. She opened it curiously. Her expression changed immediately, because every page revealed ideas, observations, mechanical solutions, not old work, current work, fresh work. The mind she thought belonged to the past was still active, still creating, still solving problems. She looked up slowly. Logan. He glanced over. Yeah. She held up the binder. I think you stopped believing how valuable you are. The garage became quiet once more. Logan looked at the binder, then at his daughter, then back at Madeline. For the first time all morning, he did not immediately have an answer. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. The garage seemed unusually quiet. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees lining the road. Inside, the smell of motor oil and fresh coffee lingered in the air. Madeline Carter continued holding the binder while Logan stood beside the truck he had been repairing. Emma watched both of them carefully. She knew her father well enough to recognize when a comment reached deeper than he wanted to admit. Logan finally broke the silence. I know exactly how valuable I am. Madeline raised an eyebrow. Do you? He nodded. I just stopped measuring value the way most people do. The answer lingered between them. Madeline slowly closed the binder. The words sounded simple, but they carried the weight of experience. She thought about the past few years of her own life. Board meetings, growth targets, expansion plans, financial reports, endless pressure to become bigger, faster, more successful. Somewhere along the way, she realized she had started measuring people the same way she measured businesses. Numbers, appearances, outcomes. Standing inside that small garage, she saw the flaw in that thinking more clearly than ever. Emma climbed onto a stool nearby. Dad used to be really famous. Logan immediately looked at her. Emma. What? She asked innocently. You were. Madeline smiled. She has a point. Logan sighed. You two are becoming a problem. Both of them laughed. The tension finally disappeared. Yet after leaving the garage, Madeline could not stop thinking about the binder. Every page represented ideas that never reached the world. Improvements, designs, mechanical solutions, insights, valuable work sitting on a shelf collecting dust. The image stayed with her all evening. The next morning she returned to the dealership. Business had returned to normal. Customers filled the showroom. Sales teams worked the floor. The service department continued operating efficiently. Yet one thing had changed. Employees kept talking about Logan Brooks. How did he spot that? One technician asked. Another shook his head. I still cannot believe it. Even the lead technician seemed impressed. That was experience. Nothing else. Madeline listened quietly. Then she walked into her office and opened her laptop. She searched through company archives, technical conferences, industry records, engineering presentations. The deeper she looked, the more impressive Logan's history became. He had contributed to projects still discussed years later. He had influenced testing standards still used throughout the industry. Several innovations carried traces of his work. Yet after leaving the profession, he disappeared almost completely. No interviews, no consulting firm, no publicity, nothing. It was as though he intentionally walked away from recognition. Later that week, Madeline received an invitation to speak at a regional automotive leadership conference. Normally, she would have accepted immediately. This time she hesitated. Then an idea appeared. A few days later, a letter arrived at Logan's garage. Emma discovered it first. Dad, she shouted from the office. You got fancy mail. Logan looked up from an engine block. That sounds dangerous. Emma handed him the envelope. He opened it and immediately frowned. What? Emma asked. Logan read it again. Then once more. You are not going to believe this. Try me. He handed her the letter. Emma's eyes widened. They want you to speak? Logan nodded. Apparently. At a conference? Apparently. Emma smiled so hard her cheeks hurt. You have to go. Logan laughed. I absolutely do not. Dad. Emma. She folded her arms. You always tell me to try things that scare me. Logan immediately regretted every piece of parenting advice he had ever given. Emma recognized victory the moment she saw it. That is different. No, it is not. The conversation continued for 2 days. Then 3. Eventually Logan agreed to attend. Not because he wanted attention. Not because he wanted recognition. Mostly because saying no to Emma proved impossible. The conference took place the following month. Hundreds of industry professionals filled the auditorium. Engineers, executives, managers, students, experts. The atmosphere felt formal and polished. Logan stood backstage wondering why he had agreed to any of this. Then the event host stepped onto the stage. Our next guest spent years shaping the way modern vehicles are tested and evaluated. Logan froze. Across the audience, Madeline sat quietly in the front row. She had arranged everything. Not as a favor, not as an apology, but because she believed people deserved to hear what he had to say. As the introduction continued, the audience grew silent. Curious, expectant, Logan took a deep breath. Because in a few moments, he would step onto that stage. And for the first time in many years, the world was about to remember exactly who he was. The auditorium was larger than Logan expected. Rows of seats stretched across the room beneath bright stage lights. Giant screens displayed conference graphics. Industry professionals filled nearly every chair. Engineers carried notebooks. Executives checked schedules. Students sat forward with anticipation. Everyone waited for the next speaker. Almost nobody recognized the man standing quietly backstage. Logan adjusted the collar of his button-down shirt and glanced toward the audience. He felt completely out of place. "You look nervous." He turned. Madeline Carter stood nearby. Logan laughed softly. "That obvious?" "A little." "Good. Good." Madeline smiled. "It means you still care." Logan looked back toward the stage. "I'm not sure this was a good idea." "That is because you are thinking about yourself." He frowned. "What should I think about?" Madeline nodded toward the audience. "Think about what they might learn." The answer stayed with him. A few moments later, the host completed the introduction. Applause filled the room. Then Logan Brooks walked onto the stage. The lights seemed brighter than before. Hundreds of faces turned toward him. For a second, the room felt impossibly large. Then he noticed something familiar. Curiosity. The same look he had seen countless times inside garages, workshops, and repair bays. People wanted answers. That part had never changed. He stepped toward the microphone. "Good afternoon." The room immediately quieted. Logan looked around and smiled. "I am going to disappoint some of you." Several people laughed. "I do not have a presentation with fancy graphics." More laughter followed. The tension disappeared. For the next 40 minutes, Logan spoke about engineering, problem-solving, and responsibility. Not with complicated technical language. Not with rehearsed corporate phrases. Just clear ideas delivered honestly. He talked about paying attention. About listening before assumptions take over. About respecting experience no matter where it comes from. The audience listened carefully. More carefully than he expected. When the session ended, the room erupted into applause. Not polite applause. Genuine applause. The kind people give when something feels real. Backstage, Madeline watched the reaction quietly. She felt proud. Not because she organized the event. Because she finally understood the person standing on that stage. Months earlier, she measured people by appearances. Today, she watched an entire industry listen to a man she almost dismissed without a second thought. After the presentation, a line formed almost immediately. Engineers wanted advice. Students wanted guidance. Executives wanted introductions. Several attendees brought old conference materials for him to sign. Logan looked mildly horrified by all of it. Emma found the situation hilarious. "Look at them." She laughed. "Dad, you are famous again." Logan shook his head. "No. Yes. No. Definitely yes." The argument continued all afternoon. By evening, social media clips from the conference had spread across automotive circles. Industry websites published summaries. Articles appeared. Interviews were requested. The attention felt overwhelming. Yet the most meaningful moment happened much later. Long after the conference ended. Long after reporters left. Long after the auditorium emptied. Outside, the Texas sky glowed with the last colors of sunset. Logan stood near the parking lot watching Emma climb into the pickup truck. The same truck he drove to the dealership weeks earlier. The same truck that made people underestimate him. Madeline approached quietly. "Quite a day." Logan nodded. "More than I expected." For a moment, neither spoke. The evening air felt calm. Peaceful. Finally, Madeline looked at him. "Can I tell you something?" Logan smiled. "Sure." She hesitated briefly. Then she chose honesty. "The day you walked into my dealership, I looked at your truck, your clothes, and your life. I thought I understood who you were." Logan listened without interrupting. "I was completely wrong." The admission hung in the air. No excuses. No explanations. Just truth. Logan glanced toward Emma. She was watching from inside the truck. Waiting patiently. Then he looked back at Madeline. Most people are wrong about something. Not usually that wrong. He laughed softly. Fair point. Madeline smiled. Then she reached into her purse and handed him a small framed photograph. Logan looked down. It was a picture taken during the conference. He stood on stage speaking while hundreds of people listened. Beneath the image was a simple engraved plaque. Respect is earned when knowledge meets character. Logan stared at the words for several seconds. Then he looked up. The emotion in his eyes surprised even him. Because the photograph was not really about the conference, or engineering, or recognition. It represented something much bigger. Proof that dignity does not need to announce itself. It only needs time. And as the sun finally disappeared beyond the horizon, Logan realized something had changed. Not the world around him. The way he saw himself. Life returned to its normal rhythm after the conference. At least that was what Logan Brooks expected. The garage opened before sunrise. Customers arrived with ordinary problems. Oil changes, brake repairs, engine diagnostics. The same steady routine that had shaped his life for years. Yet something subtle had changed. People still came for repairs, but now some arrived carrying questions. A young engineering student drove 3 hours just to ask for career advice. A technician from Dallas stopped by during a road trip to shake his hand. Local customers began bringing newspaper clippings they found online. None of it seemed real to Logan. He still wore the same work shirts, still drove the same pickup truck, still drank coffee from the same chipped mug every morning. But the world seemed determined to see him differently. One Saturday afternoon, Emma sat in the office reading while Logan finished replacing a water pump. The garage door stood open. Warm sunlight filled the workshop. A familiar black SUV pulled into the parking lot. Emma immediately smiled. She is back. Logan looked up and laughed softly. Apparently, Madeline Carter stepped out carrying a small cardboard box. No security, no assistants, no executive entourage, just her. Over the past few months, she had become an unexpected part of their lives. Not because of business, because of friendship. I brought lunch, she announced. Emma jumped to her feet. Now you are my favorite CEO. Madeline laughed. I will take that as a compliment. The three of them sat together at the small table near the office window. Outside, traffic drifted along the highway. Inside, the smell of sandwiches and coffee filled the room. For a while, nobody discussed engineering, dealerships, or conferences. They talked about ordinary things. School projects, local football games, the weather. It felt simple, comfortable, real. Eventually, Madeline looked around the garage. You know, people still talk about that day. Logan smiled. Which day? The dealership. Emma immediately pointed at him. See? I told you. Logan shook his head. I remember that day a little differently. Madeline laughed. I imagine you do. A quiet silence followed. Then Madeline became serious. Can I tell you something? Logan nodded. Sure. She looked directly at him. That morning, I thought success looked a certain way. Logan listened. Nice clothes. Expensive cars. Executive titles. She smiled sadly. I was wrong. Emma looked between them. Neither seemed embarrassed by the conversation anymore. Time had transformed something uncomfortable into something meaningful. Madeline continued. You walked into that showroom carrying something far more valuable than any vehicle I was selling. Logan raised an eyebrow. What was that? Character. The words settled gently into the room. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Outside, a breeze moved through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn echoed faintly. Finally, Logan smiled. That is a nice thing to say. It is the truth. Emma nodded immediately. It is. Everyone laughed. Later that afternoon, Madeline prepared to leave. Before getting into her SUV, she handed Logan a small envelope. What is this? He asked. Open it later. Then she drove away before he could ask more questions. That evening, after closing the garage, Logan finally opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a framed copy of a quote from his conference speech. One sentence, nothing more. Respect begins the moment we stop judging people by appearances. Beneath it, a handwritten note. Thank you for teaching me that. Logan stared at the words for a long time. Then he looked around the garage. The same tools, the same life. Yet somehow everything felt different. Not because he had become famous. Not because people finally recognized his accomplishments. Because he had been reminded of something important. True worth does not come from what people think about you. It comes from knowing who you are when nobody is looking. Emma appeared in the doorway carrying her backpack. Dad, yeah. She pointed toward the framed quote. Are you keeping it? Logan smiled. Probably. Good. She grinned. It looks like something smart people would hang on a wall. Logan laughed and switched off the garage lights. Together they stepped outside into the warm evening air. The sun was setting beyond the fields surrounding Cedar Creek. Gold lights stretched across the horizon. Father and daughter walked toward the old pickup truck parked beside the garage. Behind them, the building grew quiet. The day was over.